Welcome Stories, Lessons and Learnings.
Welcome.
We're back. Season of Reflections, Chapter 2. We're looking into psychological safety and belonging.
Look, building on that previously, Kieran, a lot of people were saying to us, we'd love to know a little bit more about what you do at Hauora, and well, psychological safety and belonging has really come to the forefront of a lot of the work we do here in Ireland.
Yeah, we're looking to enlighten, educate and empower individuals in this space because it matters hugely to our individual lives, but also our working lives. And with what's gone on in the last few years, the challenges we've faced, the uncertainty, it's something we really feel passionate about.
I think it's fair to say that we haven't written the book, let alone come up with all the knowledge and the science. We're going to share a little bit of that before we get into the guests, but really, teams have to feel safe to perform optimally, and psychological safety in itself is very much an ongoing and fluid process, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we had a chat about the best teams we were on, or the best teams we worked with. They're the ones where you can go in and there's no change in who you are when you walk through that door. You're still yourself, you're still Kieran Dunn, or you're still David Clancy, even if you're working as a support staff, or even if you're working as the star player on that team, or the star business athlete, or whatever you want to call them. It is always important that you stay the same. There's no change.
Yeah, I think alignment's massive, and we hear a lot about imposter syndrome these days with the work we do, and I think if you can forge and nurture that sense of belonging, you know you're part of something, well, it definitely ignites well-being and performance culture, but it helps reduce the potential of developing that imposter syndrome, which isn't great.
Yeah, so psychological safety, that's something that's been mentioned a lot now. Probably wasn't mentioned about 10 years ago as much, but one lady who was mentioned a lot was Professor Amy Edmondson.
Yeah, she came up with it. And, you know, even if you look at the Harvard Business Review, you'll see articles out there on collaboration and teaming. High-performing teams need psychological safety and how to create and how to forge it. But really it's about, you know, I suppose admitting mistakes, Kieran, isn't it? And how we can achieve great outcomes from that.
Yeah, I think it's most important that if we are going into a group setting to work with others, we have to be able to challenge each other. I think Ray Dalio had a big influence on the both of us, and he talks about an idea of meritocracy and radical transparency where you can speak up no matter who you're speaking to because everyone is trying to get to the best answer. They're challenging the status quo and trying to make a change that'll be influential to the decision and get to the right answer, not the one that's just going to boost my ego because I think it's right.
Yeah, it's funny. In those kind of initial phases of when you're trying to activate psychological safety in an environment, you often talk about inclusion, kind of bringing in inclusion and diversity, but also these organizations tend to evolve. They tend to be learning organizations willing to engage with contribution and challenge. And that's really at the heart of it. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, isn't it?
Yeah, we've all been in them environments with groups where we maybe shy away from telling what we've done wrong, our mistakes, because we don't have that safety, that environment, that security, as you'd call it, that if I do this, it's not going to come back and I'm not going to get punished, or there's not going to be a reciprocation of bad elements that happen because I've made something a negative aspect or a mistake.
And there's no doubt like the pandemic has challenged a lot of the connection, that kind of sense of togetherness over the last couple of years. And we really do hope that these couple of stories we're going to share will help build on cohesion, build on teaming, you know, respecting boundaries, the importance of consistency around roles and responsibilities, behaviors, values, really building into positivity. So I suppose enough of us talking, Kieran, but who's going to be shedding some stories and lessons for the listeners today?
Well, we've got some excellent ones. We got specialists in high performance leadership and teams, the head of high performance at Management Futures. We've got John Bull coming up first.
Yeah, we have Owen Eastwood to follow, the author of Belonging. So he's the man who has written the book on belonging, performance coach, amazing track record, you know, worked with Harlequins to a high level. So it'd be really interesting to hear what he has to say.
We've also got the tenured Hockey Ireland player, Lisa Jacob, who's now the team manager and also the co-owner of Hidden Strengths.
Ray Goggins is coming up as well, the author of Ranger 22 and the chief instructor of that crazy RT Special Forces Ultimate Hell Week series. So loads of interesting people centering around this big topic of kind of belonging and safety.
Yeah, what you can get from this is whether you're working in a bakery with a bunch of people, whether you go to school, whether you're in a high-performing team in a Fortune 500 company, whether you're in elite sport or in a GAA club or local basketball team, when we're working with others and interacting, psychological safety will absolutely elevate us to the next level, and we'll be able to create an environment where we all thrive because of how we interact and how comfortable we are with each other.
Yeah, just to echo on that word, Kieran, comfortable, right? We want to feel that we're safe where we are and what we're doing and who we are. You know, we don't have to have a persona or an avatar, and I think that should really resonate with a lot of people. So that's a big message.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's not easy, and it's not going to be something that you don't mean comfortable as in going in and relaxing. You mean striving for excellence. And something we've always tried to do is challenge each other. When we both are in agreement, we often ask for, is there another lens we can look at this? Because is a groupthink going on? Are we just seeing the same thing and agreeing with each other to fluff egos, to not have a personal argument or falling out? We want to get to the right answer though, so we want to see different viewpoints.
I think that will build in really well. We've got another chapter coming up in a couple of weeks on kind of exploring cognitive diversity and why that really is a competitive advantage. So listen out for that one in a couple of weeks. But let's get to those guests.
It's a great question, actually, David. There's a number of elements to that. I think one of the things is about we're quite caught on thinking about stable teams as opposed to actually standing back and just saying, how do you create a culture that's really good at teamwork? You know, and I know we've talked before about the work of Amy Edmondson and the whole notion of thinking about teaming across functions and across people as opposed to within a stable team. So I think that's one of the keys is to build a culture in the whole environment around how do we just get really good at collaborating and doing that at pace when new people come in. So building that kind of skill set around that is absolutely critical. I think we actually did some work within the UK sports system on this just last year, actually. There's something about leaders understanding key transitions in teams and what works and how to navigate those. So I think one of the really common transitions that's just constantly coming through sport is new people coming into the team. So leaders just having some skills and some tools, if you like, around actually what do we do when the team is in some transition around that. And I think sport kind of inherently gets that equation a lot better than business does. You know, that there are two really key ingredients. There is do everything we can to get the best possible talent, and then put a lot of energy into how do we create the right environment that's going to allow that talent to show up consistently and perform. One of the things I really love about the equation is the multiplication rather than the add. You know, it's the idea that the talent you have does affect the environment you have does affect the talent. So they're kind of interrelated in that sense.
As you know from having read Belonging, I strongly believe that our ancestors had a much better idea of what makes teams strong than we do, because ultimately they only had each other. And now we've got all sorts of technology and strategy and organizational stuff and consultants and all the rest of it. And there's all these books and it's just so complicated and there's so much noise around how you create a good environment. But our ancestors didn't have any of that, and they had, therefore, in my view, a very clear view of what makes teams strong and what makes them weak. And the first thing that they would always, and I'm talking about across all of our cultures, from Ireland to Polynesia, when I'm part of both of them. First thing was making sure people had a sense of belonging, because when people had a sense of belonging, their anxiety levels reduced, and that had a big effect on people's behaviour. You're able to have a sense of confidence in the people around you. You could trust them. Therefore, you could work together in a way. You could make sacrifices for each other because you realise that through thick and thin, you belong together and you were going to go through this, whatever challenges together. So we need a sense of belonging. So belonging cues are really, really important. If you feel excluded, if you feel like you're not really part of who we are, then it creates a massive anxiety reaction, and it really affects and downgrades a lot of your thinking and behaviours. So we're not interested in that. And the ancestors were also very clear on that you needed to know what you were belonging to. So they were very good at articulating a story of who we are. And often it was quite inspirational. So this tribe, this community, this family, this nation, there's stories, and we still have these stories about who we are. And that's really important, because if, notwithstanding our diversity, we can attach ourselves to being part of us. And, there's a lot of research which shows that human beings do look at the world as us and them, which has got a lot of negative connotations to it, but it is just the way we think about things. So we are tribal in a way. So we don't have to be degrading others, but our leaders certainly should provide a story that we want to attach to in terms of who we are. And then another big part of how we create this connection is that while we're doing all the work, we're not just sort of each day performing a task and then another task and then another task, that we want to feel that we're part of a story that's revealing itself. So the story of who we are is something that hasn't ended, when we arrived. It's something that we're part of now, and it's something that will go into the future. So good leaders are able to explain and actually take the time to create these town hall type environments. You can do that online as well, about this is what is happening to us right now. This is how we're performing right now. These are the challenges, and everybody feels part of it. And everybody, someone said the other day, and I thought it was a good analogy, it's like good leaders are able to create a Netflix series about us. And what they mean by that is everything that's going on at this point in time is like an episode in the story. And at the end of the episode, we always preview the next one. So leaders are good at that. They should be able to tell us this is what's going to come next. But also in a Netflix type series, there's often flashbacks to the past, which give us deeper meaning as to what's going on. That's important for leaders to be able to do that as well. So if we're facing adversity right now, if we've got a particular type of challenge, it's really useful if they are able to flash us back into the past to say people before us also faced similar challenges and they were able to overcome it. And this is how they did that. And, either through their values or certain traits that they have. And this is what we need to sort of replicate ourselves. So I think those things around belonging, around the story of who we are, and around visioning, what's coming up, they are the things that connect people rather than just sort of sitting around and doing team building exercises.
And I fully agree, belonging is such a huge part. And the way you mention it as an evolutionary need, hardwired, why do you think we've lost our way and we've become disconnected with that hardwired need?
Well, I've learned a lot from the evolutionary psychology guys at Oxford University. They've explained to me that 99%, actually more than that, of human history, we were hunter-gatherers, and we were fundamentally part of our kin, our extended families, but we're also part of bands of people. And these would often not exceed 150 or so people. So we might spend most of our time in these bands of 150 people down to smaller groups, maybe 45, 50 people, could be our extended family. And they were part of wider tribes, but we sort of lived in specific areas with these bands of people. And in those environments, you knew everybody, and actually it was quite a democratic culture. The leader was there to look after everybody. It's a fundamental role. There weren't dictators in those small groups. They were only there because people allowed them to lead. But what happened about 10,000 years ago is agriculture was developed. And from that, it just caused a fundamental change in the way human beings arrange themselves. All of a sudden, we stopped sort of moving around so much and became a bit more static. We developed not only these villages, but actually extended to towns and then to cities. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions of people. So all of a sudden, the sort of intimate way that we were used to, where belonging was something very visceral because we knew everybody in our band or in our family, we started to become part of these communities where there was, as I said, hundreds of thousands and millions of people where you don't know all the people around you whatsoever. In those contexts, your sense of belonging is reduced, and that creates a lot of anxiety and lack of cohesion in communities, which you still see now in terms of crime, in terms of all sorts of social problems. All these forces were unintentional in a way, but they've undermined our sense of belonging. But it's never gone away. It is completely hardwired into our biology that when we go into a situation where we don't actually feel we belong, we feel like an outsider, we feel like people are judging us, they're not including us, we still have this incredible hormonal reaction. So our biology and our psychology has not changed, but our environments have. So I think, the smart leaders, and you see it in sport sometimes, which is great, but also in other parts of society, we try to gather smaller communities where we feel that sense of belonging, whether it's a church, whether it's going to a sporting game, and, smart working environments do the same thing. And they take us back in many ways into our evolutionary past where we are part of a smaller group of people where we feel a sense of belonging, we feel, right, we're at a shared mission together and we feel this could be a safe place. And if you can tap into that, then I believe that's where you start to really explore people's potential. I don't believe you can get people to their full potential when they are in a state of anxiety, feeling like an
it's a really difficult one in high performance because best effort and max effort is required like a lot. It can be day in, day out. You can have down periods for a couple of days every month or whatever, but you really are existing in an environment where just being part of it, there's an expectation on you that you're going to deliver everything you have. So I suppose it's kind of that experience of understanding that, over 7, 8, 10 years would mean that with the younger athletes, I'm much more conscious of, they don't really want to take the breaks when they get them in the season, the 2 or 3 weeks. And it's just about really saying to them, I know you don't feel like you need it, but just take it, book something and go away. And then I suppose with the kind of older athletes, where that there's that accumulation that's happened over a long number of years. And also they tend to be the people who are captains in their clubs, and they're maybe the higher profile players who are wanted by people a little bit more to do all the talks and do whatever, is about just trying to have those conversations with them to, and they're all really nice and probably really bad at saying no to things. And it's just about making sure that they understand what they really need to do for themselves first and foremost, and then everything else that they need to do, what are the priorities, and then what's the thing that you need to say no to, and just trying to, I suppose, maybe coach them a little bit around that. But I suppose you can't do the hard work for them, but just, I suppose, trying to give them some examples around your own experience where they may not realize it now, but it will kind of help them to sustainably give the best of themselves in lots of different ways, in lots of different areas.
And Lisa, just to build on that, drive is something obviously that really helps people excel. And 139 caps for the Irish hockey team, transitioning into the oval ball game with the rugby team, and then obviously even with that contract with the Netherlands club there with hockey, you achieved so much as a player. So how can you help with those players that are on the cusp maybe of really becoming a really special player, because you've been there and done it at such a high level for such a long time?
Yeah, I suppose probably for me personally, I always had a curiosity around my own potential. That was probably where my drive came from, is that I wanted to understand maybe how good I could be or how far I could go or whatever. And so with the younger players, it's, I suppose, first and foremost, helping them to understand their why, so that I suppose a lot of days can be tough days and hard days, and the days where you don't have drive just readily available to tap into. It's about maybe digging a bit deeper into your own purpose and reason why you're trying to be part of a national team or whatever it is that your ambition is. So that's probably where I start, that they understand the anchor and everything can come from that. And I suppose there are lots of things, maybe technically and tactically and all those sort of things, that hopefully you can support players to become the best that they can be by, I suppose there's so much that you can look at when you look at a player with potential, but from a coaching point of view, it's really trying to strip everything away, no more than I was talking about energy there, and go, what are the 1 or 2 things that will make the biggest difference? On top of that, I really find actually people in Ireland particularly, and also I suppose when you look at the female population, they really struggle to understand their own strengths, sort of proudly bring them to the world. Oftentimes, I'll give you an example of a player who came off the pitch last night, and young player in the national team, and she had only picked up a stick for the first time in 3.5 weeks after a break that they'd been on, and came off a practice match that's the first one back after Christmas, and had eliminated maybe 4 or 5 players, and then hit the target but didn't score the goal. Comes off I should have scored that. And it's actually about reframing the perspective and kind of saying, you need to recognize all the good that you've done in the build-up. And yes, of course, we can add this on, and if we're still talking about it in 6 weeks from now, you can be annoyed that you didn't score, but just that people really understand their strengths as well, and can see that in practice, and can see their own progress as well. And all of those things, I think, actually can really help from a drive perspective to push you to the capacity of your potential or to the next level or whatever.
So for us, like how we do it in selection in the real world, in special forces, is you break that team down to 0, and it's a vulnerability piece we work on where they're in a position where they've all seen each other at their worst, and then the next phase of it is to build them into their skill set and improve. So how you work in the mindset is by instilling more confidence, working on their decision making process under pressure. Like you make a position of adversity all the time. So every little thing they do all day is pressurized. So it becomes the norm for them. So that straight away gives them, their mindset is improved. They're more confident. They're more confident in their colleagues. They're more confident in themselves. And the most important thing with mindset and being mindful, people don't understand in special forces. They think like, you're an assault moron that just goes in and shoots people. There's so much else to that. Like the mindful side of it is more important, where you're aware of what's going on, both inside your head and outside around you. You're focused 100% on the task. When I'm saying 100%, you're not thinking about your shopping list or what you're going to do when you're finished. You're 100% focused on that task and nothing else. And they're two of the main things that will help a guy going forward. So that's what we'd work on with people, and give them that ability to do that at the drop of a hat. And there's certain techniques, obviously, and routines and drills we would practice continually, and to make that work.
And let's talk about Coreskill training. Mindset, merging of performance, passion, and purpose. Like big words, profound words that really resonate to everyone probably listening to this today. Kind of, where did that movement start for you? Like the Coreskill piece, and kind of what are you hoping it becomes?
For me, I suppose goal-wise for it, how it started, I had been doing it, assisting other groups, on a smaller scale. I had got some inroads from people because of the show and other things. And don't forget, like I spent, before the book and all this and the show were 2019. The 3 years before that, I was building myself as, a normal soldier first, then a special forces soldier, instructor, teacher, trainer. So we had that loop of, your operation, then you go back to training, your operation, you go back to training. So it's a natural fit for me I found to be able to kind of move that on to other people. So it's not that I find it easy to do. I just think that I have a knack to identify teams maybe and help them build a little bit. So that's kind of where it came from. I decided I'd kind of do it this year and see not see how it went out. It's going to work. Of course it's going to work, because that's the nature of the person I am. I'll make it work, and that's the way it is. The kind of so that's, and the mindset for me then was, and what the goal of it, like I just would like it to establish it. Like I've given it this year to kind of see how it works, as in my delivery and all the different people I'll work with and all that, and then I'll kind of come up with kind of a process then for next year, whereas I'll refine things better, which I do. It's very bespoke kind of service, I guess, to people. Like everyone wants different things and everyone has different failings. Like, if you're working with a group, you don't just come in with a party line saying, okay, we'll do this, 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 and this and fix it. You have to observe what they're doing first and what isn't going wrong, or what is going wrong, should I say. They mightn't tell you what's going wrong. They mightn't even know what's going wrong. You have to watch it, identify it, and that's what you target with people. So that's kind of what I've done all my career, really. Like it's, especially in special forces, it's just the will to win, the will to get on with it, get it done, and to be as effective as you can all the time, not just when the lights are on, all the time. It's simple, but it isn't easy, because the most important thing is you need, for a team who wants to attain that high performance status that we all talk about, you have to have a buy-in, and people have to be willing to do a warts and all process. So where that starts is like absolutely open and honest conversation about what's good and what's bad, like your own faults, your own fears and problems. And, I do a piece on that with people, kind of more extreme version of it, where I get them to point each other's problems out and so on and so forth, or a softer version where I get them to talk about it themselves. And it's so kind of takes the chains off for a team, because like if you're not with someone all the time, and look, special forces and the military is probably, I won't say the ultimate way to build a team, but it's pretty extreme. Like I haven't seen another organization outside the military that can create that bond like that. But you can give snippets of that bond to people, and if a company or group or team are willing to open their soul and be willing to kind of fix something because they're passionate about doing it, they want to do well, then you can do so much with them.
And say if something breaks in any environment, like resilience is a word we've heard an awful lot about in the last couple of years, and it's something close to home for the two of us here. You would be the man to talk to about building resilience and understanding it and sense making it.
Yeah.
What do you do with individuals when you're trying to help them get back to where they were, or even get back stronger?
Yeah, well, like resilience is the buzzword, since we had our lockdowns, and everybody has their own kind of, I won't say version of it. That's not fair to say that, but their own view on it, let's say. For my side of it, and like all resilience is, right, is ability just to keep going. And when things go wrong, all these things. So how it's learned, there's 3 important ways, I guess, you learn resilience. So first of all is by experience. So you tell someone, look, you've done this before. This is what happened. This went wrong, but learn from it, and that's an important part. You learn then from a learned version of resilience. For example, when you're a child and you lick a 7-volt battery and it burns your tongue, you either like it and you do it again, or you don't do it again. So you'll become resilient there straight away. And I suppose the last and kind of most important part of it is your personality is a huge part of it. Like some people are naturally more resilient, and they're easier. I won't say easier, but it's they kind of can get more out of it and go further with it, because like everything else, it's a scale. Like we all have different levels of resilience for different things. So they're kind of the 3 ways I work on it and deal with people, if that answers your question.
Now, so we hope you got a lot from that. There's so much to psychological safety, teaming, belonging, the whole thing. And we got Amy Edmondson, who we want you to go look up, as well as these excellent 4 guests that we have just shared with you.
Yeah, and the takeaways, the kind of actions that you really should think about today and reflect on, vulnerability, creating a space to see people for who they truly are, allow a group of individuals to break through those glass ceilings of working as a team. So vulnerability, a massive takeaway for us today.
Yeah, we want to look at stable teams. It's not always going to be focused on them. There's going to be change. So why don't we focus on creating a culture that promotes excellent teamwork and teaming, and looking to understand exactly where we're going as a group?
I think to chunk on that a little bit further, the third big takeaway today is look at all the good in the build-up. To piggyback on what Lisa said, it's sometimes really important to look at what you've done, write it down. It can help reveal the progress to date that builds momentum, but it definitely fuels your drive to push on.
Yep, so there's so much to take away from that. And if you can find any lessons that are individual to your situation, do share them with us all the time. But we've got some interesting things coming up. We got chapter 3 soon, and we got some live shows on the way. So thanks very much for tuning in again. Chapter 2 of Season of Reflections.
See you soon.